Welcome to Why I Left, a podcast exploring life-changing career moves. I'm your host, Brian Aquart. Join me as I chronicle real stories from real people about the bold decisions that transform their careers and lives. Let's dive in. Hello, and thanks for tuning in to this episode of Why I Left. Today, we're diving into a conversation that blends purpose-driven leadership, career change, and advancing equity in the workplace. This episode features Cynthia Pong, an inspiring guest who made a remarkable career pivot, moving from a high-stakes role as a public defender to creating a platform that empowers others to rise in their careers. Our conversation today is full of insights about pursuing your calling, breaking barriers, and claiming your space at the table. If you're thinking about making a big career shift or building a career that aligns with your own values, this episode is for you. Let's go check it out. All right, welcome back. So our guest today is Cynthia Pong, an award-winning executive coach, Forbes contributor, and advocate for women of color in leadership. Cynthia is the founder and CEO of Embrace Change, a company dedicated to helping women of color and non-binary professionals claim positions of power, advance their careers, and secure the respect they deserve in the workplace. With accolades as a LinkedIn top voice and Anthem Award winner, Cynthia's career has been dedicated to advocating for historically marginalized voices in professional spaces. And she's also an author. Don't Stay in Your Lane, The Career Change Guide for Women of Color, a book that has resonated deeply with readers and has become a trusted resource for those seeking to forge their own paths. Cynthia's journey has inspired truthfully thousands, and I'm very excited to chat with her today. She has a flagship leadership accelerator program that continues to help women of color secure influential roles, negotiate for the positions they deserve, and lead with authenticity. So let's dive in. Cynthia, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much. Thank you for having me. I'm super excited to be here.
Definitely. And so, I always love sharing how I end up finding people, and we actually met in the comments. In the comments of LinkedIn. And so glad that the platform still continues to give, which I love.
It does.
And so would love to start out with just a little background, right? You tell us a little bit about, your professional background and really what's inspired you to pursue initially a career in law.
I know. You and me both, right?
Yeah.
So I would say the story really started when I first went to college. Growing up, the last thing I wanted to do was be a lawyer. And I write about this in Don't Stay in Your Lane too. I get all into the details, but I really thought lawyers just all they did was lie about things. And I was like, that's the last thing I'll do. So I go to college. I went to Brown, and we have this student of color orientation program there that's really special. And I went to there, and my race consciousness really just blossomed from there. So that's when I really got into different issues around racial justice, social justice, and deepened my passion there. So then my first goal was actually I wanted to be a community organizer. It's very Barack Obama story. So I was like, all right, I'm gonna do this. I want to be a community organizer. Let's try it out. I did an internship in LA one summer working with healthcare workers, organizing them. And I was like, I cannot do this. This is really hard. I don't have I don't have the personality. I don't have what it takes to have just doors shut in my face every single day and do this. So I was like, all right, I still want to make racial justice, social justice change. What can I do instead if I'm not going to be kind of trying to dismantle stuff from outside the system? All right, what about inside the system? So then naturally I was like, all right, let me consider law school and go there. And my first goal before landing on the public defender goal was I actually wanted to do that, but for youth. So a juvenile defense lawyer.
Okay.
I quickly learned in law school that I did not have thick enough skin to do that either. It just was I would be crying every single day. So I sort of defaulted to being a public defender. But having that particular goal was the only reason I went to law school. I wasn't interested in being a lawyer for the sake of being a lawyer.
Oh, gotcha. And so how do you think those experiences as a public defender shaped your perspective, I guess, further on social justice, and how have they really influenced some of your current work?
Well, one way is that it brings me a healthy perspective, because nowadays if I'm upset about something, annoyed about something, scared about something, I can always remind myself that, you know what, Cynthia, no matter what you do, no matter what you say or don't do, nobody is going to jail because of that. So it helps kind of just reground me in the reality of what I am doing, which is trying to push for system change, but in a very different way than I did before. So that's one way it influences. The second way I think is just I see it as this might be getting like too deep too fast or whatever, but this is actually something we work on in the leadership accelerator too. But I like to think about things from the big picture and kind of like reverse engineer down. So if I was to think about my whole kind of like life mission, like what am I trying to do with the amount of time that I have on this earth? What is ultimately my goal? I had always thought, okay, it's not a very high goal. It's very lawyery if you think about it, but it's just to try to do more good than bad because I already know, like by existing, et cetera, I'm already contributing and complicit in a lot of larger systems, impact on the globe, and all of that. So within that, though, my goal with my career is to move the needle on racial justice. And so both my public defender career and my work with Embrace Change fits under that umbrella. Do you know what I mean? But it's just kind of like a different iteration of it. And it works better for me because I learned I don't work great within institutions.
Got it. No, that makes sense. So a part of this show, we love talking about these career moves, these career pivots, and I want to take you back. It's a little way back now, but 2015, you make this pivotal decision to leave your public defender role. So ultimately, why did you leave that job, and was there like a specific moment when you knew you were ready for a change?
There was. I write about this super in depth too and Don't Stay in Your Lane, but there was this kind of like light bulb moment that I'll get to in a second. But the reason that I left was because I burned out, and I think that's a really common experience for a lot of us, especially women of color, people of color doing work that is trying to push for social change in any sort of sector, healthcare, law, environmental, all of that. It's tough. And you're expected to do a lot with relatively very little. But for me, it was the burnout of just like being in a system where I wanted to be like a movement lawyer, but day in and day out, I was steeped in the system where I was just watching my clients, Black and Latino clients from the Bronx, in and out of jail, in and out of jail, and like feeling that there's really, I mean, sure, you can make an impact, but it can easily feel like you're not. Like you really could just, another lawyer could be there doing it and the same exact result happens. That can be easy to think that that is the case. And that's very easy to go from that to feeling the sense of burnout. And that one kind of like light bulb moment or whatever, I remember it pretty clearly, actually. I was in the courthouse in the Bronx, which is called the Bronx Hall of Justice, this big glass building in the basement. And I was talking to a relatively new client and his family. And I had like that out of body thing. I don't know if you've ever had that happen.
I have had that happen. Yes.
And I was
Yes.
like talking to them, just saying like my normal spiel or whatever. And then all of a sudden it was like I could see myself from a third party view and being like, what are you saying, Cynthia? Like, I was explaining things, but I had become like a complete apologist for the system. I was really just like, yes, this is just how it is. And I realized at that moment how jaded I had become as a coping mechanism for being in the system. Um, and so as it was happening, I was like also having this like third party shock at what I was saying and how I was showing up. And I was like, this is not what I came to do. I'm not doing this job justice anymore. I need to like figure something out. So that was like a real pivotal moment.
And curious about that. So when that experience happened,
Yeah.
from that point until the time you actually were like, you know what, I am going to leave now,
Yeah.
what was the time frame?
Oh my gosh. I will say I know that from the time that I feel like I started burning out, like looking back and I could kind of like identify that until when I left, it was 3 years. So it's three
Wow.
years. Yes. But that moment in the courthouse probably was closer to when I actually was like, I was already aware that I was like not doing great, but I was trying different things, like take your PTO and like, going to a lot of therapy, and therapy is great. Like it honestly saved me so many times in this longer time period. Get like do more activities after work. Like I tried all the different things to sort of mitigate and see if like I could make it work. So that was why it took 3 years. And also because that was my only goal, Brian. Like literally that was what I was working towards for that many years. And yeah, it's hard.
Wow, no, I can only imagine. And now let's talk about the transition now. So you're now pivoting out of this. What challenges did you face in that transition and how did you overcome them?
So many challenges, really, looking back. I mean, I guess the first one that might be relatable to folks is just not knowing. So, like, sitting in a lot of not knowing and being kind of okay with that and not panicking every single moment of every single day. Because when I left, I took an unpaid sabbatical. And luckily, because at Legal Aid we were unionized, we had even like the option to do that. And yeah, it wasn't paid, but like I knew within a year I could go back and have my same job if I wanted without having to re-interview and all of that. So that actually provided me a lot of like mental safety net. And then I financially planned for it. Like I put in for my sabbatical 10 months in advance, and nobody ever does that. Like they just do it like 90 days or like a couple weeks or whatever. The first challenge was I was burnt out AF. Like I just couldn't do anything really for like the first kind of 2 months. I couldn't do anything in terms of figuring out what was next. I really just needed recuperation time. So I took that and I had sort of planned for that. So that was good. But then it was the not knowing. So it's like, all right, it's been 2, 3 months. What are you doing, Cynthia? Like, what is the plan? You got to do something. Are you going to go back? If so, how on earth are you going to make that work? Because you tried everything already before. Or are you going to do something else? In which case, what the fuck else? You know, like you only wanted to do this one thing. And like, you know, dealing with just all the cascading issues around that. Like you have this career and then like, how do you explain to all the people as well? Like for any first gen folks, second
Oh
gen
yeah.
folks,
Oh
you
yeah.
know, immigrant family situation, how do you explain that your family that you just left a unionized legal job that's highly respectable and you're going to do, you're not sure, you know?
Yeah. All
So
the best.
yeah,
Right.
right.
Yeah.
It's a lot to navigate. So I don't know. Those are some of the challenges.
No,
It didn't
without a
answer
doubt.
the how do you overcome, but
I think that kind of leads into the next one and really around like when you reflect on the time, right? What would you say maybe is the biggest lesson that you learned that stayed with you throughout your career?
that's a great question. We have to learn, especially for those of us who are women of color, people of color, women in general, any kind of marginalized identity. Um, it's really hard, but we have to give ourselves permission to try things at the risk of making a mistake. Even with the bigger things in career. Because this pivot, looking back, I mean, I'm not gonna say it was the best thing that ever happened to me because it's really like not. And I don't think work is like I don't elevate work to that extent in life. I think life really is more than that. And it's like, you know, we're working towards multiple things at the same time. But it was pretty significant. And if we had multiple timelines, I feel like the timeline of me kind of just continuing and slogging it through because that was what I had chosen. I had so much sunk cost there. Like I would hate to see that person. I feel like that version of me would be so miserable and also wouldn't have been able to make so much of the impact that I've been able to make now, you know, but like being able to make that first several steps towards it, scary as it was, I feel like there's a lot of lessons there because now as an entrepreneur, there's also other scary pivots that you have to make. And there's tons of times where you don't know what on earth you're doing. And you're like, I don't know if this thing is going to work. I'm going to throw that spaghetti at the wall anyways. And you kind of just have to take those risks. So I think the lesson, if I had to boil it down, was don't be afraid to make mistakes and give it a try, you know? Like most everything in your career is course correctable. Like you can figure it back out if you need to.
I love that too. And what I'm hearing in that too is a certain level of intention, right? And that don't be afraid to try, but like you almost have to be intentional in actually trying.
Yeah.
Like actually go for it. So
Yeah.
I love that you mentioned that.
100%.
Yeah.
100%. We have this framework that I teach that I came up with in the Leadership Accelerator called C Care. So it's like
Okay.
one C hyphen CARE. And it stands for a couple of things, but how I came up with it was in coaching so many women of color, I realized the kind of gap or the hurdle between us and our leadership goals, us and our career goals, it's like 99.99% of the time not a skills gap. It's not a deficiency. It's not a deficit that we have. It's not that we need to just like do something like learn another skill or get another certification, another degree. I know I'm
Yeah. I know you're about to say that.
I know, but it comes down to the five things in that framework of C Care, those five letters, and they stand for compassion, namely self-compassion, curiosity, action-oriented, real-time experimentation. And in all of that is exactly what you are talking about, which is like actually taking the action and doing a thing. But also the piece about compassion, it's first and it's separate, because that is the part I think a lot of us struggle with the most. We don't give ourselves a lot of self-compassion. We don't give ourselves a lot of grace, a lot of space to make a mistake, to try something and look stupid, to risk having a shame response, to risk having a difficult conversation with our families, or like all of that thing, because society doesn't give us a lot of space to fuck up, basically. So it's not our fault. It's the conditioning, 100%. And also it's our job to do our own healing so that we can still give ourselves that compassion in that space, because otherwise you're never going to reach your potential. Like you're always going to be shrinking and holding back a bit, and the world is not going to get the benefit of your full illumination.
No, I love that. And I think as I'm hearing you talk about that now and thinking about some of the past guests, men and women, um, it's like people have had that enlightening over these past few years. It was like finally, you know? And so I've loved to hear one that you're coaching on that, and that's those are the things you teach. But then I think some folks are also coming to that maybe through being still or whatever worked for them, to actually start coming into themselves. So I love that you mentioned that. And there's so much alignment in the conversations I have.
Yeah. No, I'm so heartened to hear that, because my whole thing is like, we need to find ways. And it doesn't have to be like 24/7. Not every space is ready for it. Not every space deserves it. And, we do have to take protective measures and stuff like that, be strategic and intentional, like you said, but being more us, having enough spaces to be more us, I feel like there's major power in that. And, just given everything that's going on, like we have to double down on that even more, but in the right places and spaces with the right people.
Definitely, definitely. So let's talk a little bit about embrace change, right? And so I've been very, very intrigued about it. Obviously, did my background on it. So you all are doing
Yeah,
some
you sure
great
did a lot of
work.
research.
I did, I did. So can you share embrace change's mission and really the key impact you're aiming to make for women of color in the workplace?
Yes. So our mission, pretty straightforward, but not simple, or simple but not easy. Our mission is to get all women of color the money, power, and respect that we deserve in the workplace. I know that that is not going to happen in my lifetime. I mean, I'm a skeptical like lawyer brain at the end of the day. So I'm pretty sure that I'm not going to see that before I, keel over, whenever that might be. However, that is our mission, and that is what we're working towards. As like a more near term like sub mission or sub goal, I want to transform and empower 10,000 women of color. The way I'm sort of counting it, we're like well on our way there in terms of either clients, people in our accelerator, graduates, people in our EC collective, people on our newsletter. We're like, in the 8K region of like however you think about it. So my goal was to do like 10K by 2026. And it seems like I might be able to hit that figure sooner, but you know what? Then I'm just gonna go for the next level. You know what I mean? But that's our mission. The impact I hope we can have is it's a whole range and spectrum of things, Brian. Like, sure, the big flashy goals and the things that we talked about, the big promotions or the title change and like the life-changing career switches and pivots and all that. Like those are great. And I love those. Don't get me wrong. And also a lot of the change is more subtle than that. It might be a shift in your relationship with yourself, which, like I'm fond of saying, is the most important relationship that we'll have in our lives. That relationship with ourselves. And it really goes back to that C care thing, that first C and the self compassion. So like, even knowing that somebody like took 5 minutes to actually take time for themselves and think about what their goals are for the next year, the next quarter, like that to me is like a major win, because it's that intention you talked about, putting that intention and attention like on the thing that is really important, that is going to help them in the future and probably generations to come too. Because this actually makes me think of this other concept that I talk a lot about, which is career insurance. And that's probably a lot beyond the scope of today or what have you. But what I think about a lot is how, for us as people of color, women in general, queer folks, we don't have a lot of times the generations of wealth to lean back on. We're not necessarily the trust fund babies or whoever, or the white dudes basically who can fail up. We see it all the time. And we know it's a double standard for us, right? You got to work twice as hard to get half the pay, that type of thing. So I get it. We are not working with the same built-in like legacy safety nets and career insurance that other folks may have. And so therefore it is our responsibility to build that in for ourselves and to actually invest in it and to think about your career as an asset that you are building, that you are shaping, that you are turning into the thing that you want it to be. And you want it to be your safety net. And it very well can be. It is functionally what I've been doing for years. Even when I was as a public defender, like I was investing in therapy, I was working on all the self-growth stuff, I was skilling up on a number of things that still help me to this day. And so now like I can make some moves and pivots and not be afraid that like I'm going to lose my job in next month or what have you. So I don't know. That went super far afield, but basically I'm hoping to instill that and give more women of color and people of color those kind of skills so that they can do this for themselves.
No, I love that. And you've mentioned it a couple of times. You're the leadership accelerator. And as I noticed, and as you've mentioned, there's been remarkable success there. And this goal that you're talking about, 10,000, and you're already roughly around 8K. I mean, you're well on your way. So congratulations in advance, right?
Thank you.
Um,
Thank you.
but would love to hear from you. What makes this program stand out, and what outcomes have you seen from graduates that you are most proud of?
Oh, I love it. And one of them you might already know because she's also another guest on the pod. Uh,
Okay.
that's right. So what makes it stand out is again pretty simple. Like I'm the type of person, Brian, that if I look around, first of all, I'm resourceful. Like if I'm looking for something, I will look around and try to be able to find it. It's also how I ended up writing my book. I was looking for a book that provided career change advice that could actually be applied by women of color and non-binary people of color, and I couldn't find it. Like I was looking for a while, and then I had it dawned on me, all right, Cynthia, you gotta fucking write it yourself. So like I did. But in the same way, that's why I created the accelerator too, because I was looking for leadership frameworks, leadership programs, leadership training resources that I could give to my clients, that was tailored to their experience, that took into account their lived experience as a woman of color, as a Black woman, as a Latina, as an Asian American woman, as a Native American woman in a workplace. You can't just take the stuff off the shelf that the white folks use and expect that it's not going to come with some different response from other people. It's going to elicit different blowback. And I don't know. I think nowadays there's more recognition of that, but back in 2015, 16, like there was not that much out there. So that's why I created the accelerator. It's just tailored leadership training that actually speaks to and understands the realities of being a woman of color leader in today's workplace. Results wise, some of the like flashy ones that I love to tell people, a lot of graduates have landed very prestigious fellowships, including the White House Fellowship, which like 11 people get per year or what have you. It's like 17 or something in the teens. Also like Yale Fellowship. Someone else got a different one. Stanford, I think it was. And then like, going to different grad programs like Berkeley's B School and NYU and stuff like that, and having their work pay for it, things like that, like just really big wins, I think, for them and their goals in that way. And of course, just, different promotions. I actually just heard from a graduate yesterday. She got a promotion to like senior global director of vaccines at a large pharma company. So like that was very exciting. So there's those. But then I'm going to say it again, like it's sometimes the wins that are not the ones you see splashed all over LinkedIn or wherever that are the ones that kind of matter more to me, because I know that they're a sign of like deeper, actual long-term change in a person. Like literally not giving up, like continuing to show up, like being in a long job search, which a lot of folks are nowadays because the economy is what it is. And just not giving up, continuing to go out there and meet people and network and put yourself out there and apply to things and think of how you can create your own streams of revenue. Like those are the kinds of things that also really make me feel like super proud.
No, I love that. And as you were talking, what's great about not only LinkedIn and how we found each other, but
Yeah.
as you're talking, I'm thinking of at least two other guests who I'm going to connect you with because
Uh-huh.
the work that you do and some of the work that they do, it's just very much aligned. One in particular is a young lady named Melina Cordero,
Okay.
and she's doing some work in like the post 2020 workplace and things like that. And she's former real estate, worked in corporate real estate, and so there's so much alignment there. And I've seen, what's funny, other guests who I'm like, oh, you all should connect, and then they pop up on her platform or they pop up on
Yes,
other people's platform. So I'm going to
I
connect
love
you
it.
with her for sure,
That's
because
great.
there's some nice alignment there for sure.
I love it. And like implicitly, you've raised kind of also this other, yeah, I know this wasn't like on the agenda or whatever, but like collectivity and community power in
Oh yeah,
networking. Like
yes.
I don't know about you, but I know a lot of people, clients and also just friends, people, they hate networking. I don't know if you know people who like are like that.
I know some people who are not a fan of it, especially like the in person shaking hands, kissing babies type of thing. Yeah, they don't like it.
You can already visualize it, right? Like some
Yes.
conference room, very corporate-y, everyone's wearing their suit and tie. It's like trying to hand out business cards, drink in one hand kind of thing. Yeah.
Right. Yes.
Yes, I also hate that. And I am also a huge proponent of networking, especially for women of color and people of color, because it's all about the people power piece of it. Literally, what you are doing now could catalyze who knows what in the future, right? Like, me and Melinda will talk, we'll see what collabs there might be. Like, I can help her, she can help me. Like, who knows, right? And then there might be people in our networks that then also benefit from that. But I know this is not like a networking podcast or whatever, but I just have to double down on this because a lot of people in our community and stuff, especially introverts, and I'm a big introvert as much as I might be chatty as well. Um, we don't like to go out there and talk to people and talk about ourselves. But the truth is people hire people they like, know, and trust and see as someone who could do whatever that position is. So going out there and connecting with people, you never know. You could be solving the next problem that's been keeping them up at night, you know? But if they don't know about you, that's kind of on us.
Absolutely. It's the beauty of it. Yeah. And no, I that's what I love about the show too, because this common theme and thread of work truthfully connects us all. I just got off a call talking about that. Actually, it was sourcing another guest potentially, right? Right. And it's like these things connect us, and everybody's working on what I love about this space is that there's room for everybody. There's truthfully is room for everybody. The work that folks are doing, whether it's in equity, whether it's trying to move the needle, whether it's women in the workforce, men, whoever, right? There is room for all, and that's what I love about it. And I see these little connections, and so whenever it sparks, I'm like, I got to say it right away because then I'll remember it, right? So,
Yeah, I
for
love
sure,
that.
yeah,
Yeah, and you're obviously a super connector. I know a lot of folks who are like that too, which is a superpower in and of itself. But making that kind of like web, I see it as like all those network connections and like
yes,
really truly a web. Um, like it's just infinite like positive generativity. That's not a word, but you know what I mean.
I know exactly what you mean. Absolutely. Well, now let's talk about your book. So we've mentioned it a couple times. Don't stay in your lane. So what motivated you to write? Oh, nice, very nice. What motivated you to write this book, and really, what central message do you hope resonates with readers, especially women of color?
So I think I kind of previewed this earlier, but what motivated me to write it was I was looking for the book and I couldn't find it. I don't want to sound ungrateful or like in a weird way, but like I didn't want to write this book. I really just felt like, okay, it doesn't exist. And if no one else is going to do it, fine, I'll do it, kind of thing. And so that's how I set about doing it. But I am in retrospect really glad that I did because it did allow a lot of people to be seen in it. And like, I don't know, people feel just really like touched by it because I was very, and I am very transparent, like, like you're seeing this, what you see is kind of what you get sort of thing. And the book is written in the same way. So I think people really can hear my voice in it because I alternate sharing my own journey and then it's kind of like, okay, over to you. Like, how can you apply this to yourself? And it's very interactive. There's worksheets, there's like special sections in here. Like there's I made these sort of there's like things for you to fill out, like what would you tell your friend? Because a lot of us can tell our friend something, but then when it comes to us, it's a little harder. And then I have like all these special sections that are like imposter syndrome or like martyr complex. stuff like that I experienced. So I really put it in there. It's kind of like an encyclopedia for your career because you can go back to it time and time again. I know one person that we already know in common who she's like, I don't know how you do it, Cynthia, but I read your book in like small little spurts. And she's like, each time I'm feeling lost, I go back to it, I flip to a random place. And she's like, it always has the message that I need to hear in that moment. Like, I don't know how that is happening, but it's just a really kind of like an encyclopedia you can always reference. The one message I hope that women of color or anyone reading this book, because we've had women in general, queer folks, men of color read this book and they also really enjoy it and find it practical, is really just the title message.
Mm-hmm.
Stay in this kind of approach, attitude, feeling, intention of like, yeah, I'm not going to let society or people or my community or culture or whatever just like tell me what I should do or not do. I'm going to decide for myself what I want to do next. I am going to take ownership over my career and my leadership and make it what I want it to be, which is that career insurance. But that's like the energy that I want people to take from it is like, you can do this. And the first step is really deciding that, making that intention that, yeah, I'm not just going to stay in my lane, unless that is what you want to do.
I love that. I think as I'm hearing that, and the book title really resonated with me as well. But I almost think about that when I started this show, right? Like, why am I doing this? Right? Or, do I have to do this? No, I don't. But you know what? I'm feeling like this calling, this push, this whatever. And then you know what? Just do it, Brian. Like, just do it. Right. And so, yeah, I love that you mentioned that.
Yeah. And like, look at what you have built now. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
Like,
it's
not
crazy.
only that first spark, but now you've connected, like, you've reached so many more people than you have. I mean, tens of thousands, like, through how this works. And like, your YouTube channel is like incredible. Like, just think about it. That all could have not existed if you hadn't taken those first steps and like, yeah, I'm not going to stay in my lane with this. Like, who's to tell me and to just do it? I really think that you simply doing that, even if people don't realize it, it really does inspire other people to also be like, you know what? Brian Aquart did it. Like, why can't
Yeah,
I?
just try. Right.
You
Yeah.
know?
No, I
Yeah.
love that. I love that.
Yeah.
Well, I think this is like a great transition about into like advice, right? Talking about others who may be thinking about a shift or some type of pivot. And so, for people who may be listening now, especially women of color facing systemic barriers, as we all know, what advice would you give them to help them navigate this process of a career shift with confidence?
If I had to give blanket advice, I would say get support. And like, I'm open to how that looks, right? But don't try to do everything on your own. And I say this fully knowing that a lot of us have that very ingrained. It's like, I'm just going to do this on my own. I can do it. I can do all of it. Black woman, super woman kind of like stereotype. Like it's a thing. I've seen it in a lot of our clients. And I want to just like, I know it's really hard to reach out and ask anyone for help. It takes on extra layers for us to do that. And also I think it's really, really necessary to at least mentally be open to that. Now, the support or the help can look any kind of way. It could be, you tell some of your friends and like they're in on this with you and they can kind of like energetically or emotionally support you at different times. It could also mean seeking out a professional if you need something like your LinkedIn or your resume redone, or if you actually want some career coaching around it. I mean, a lot of people are coming, I would say most of the folks that have approached us this year as far as clients, like looking for coaching, it's because they're engineering a career change and a career pivot. And so, I feel so grateful. We have an all BIPOC team of coaches and they can like support in this way so that you don't feel like it's an isolating experience you're going through alone. Like I hear that every week too. Like people feel like they're in this silo by themselves and it doesn't have to be that way. I get why it feels that way. It's because especially if you're doing career change, it's like the people that you've been working with and you've been surrounded by, they're not going to go with you in this next part of the journey. And that actually is very hard. And there's some processing and grieving that needs to happen around that. And then also the people that are in the place that you want to pivot to, they don't know you yet. So like you are kind of alone, but you don't have to be. Even through my career change, and I write about this a ton in Don't Stay in Your Lane, in a sense, I was working with my therapist for a long time before the change and then like through it and really like past that period of time. She also was an executive coach, so I really lucked out because she had both of those skill sets. Sometimes joke about I talk about her so much in Don't Stay in Your Lane. Don't Stay in Your Lane is kind of like an ode to my former therapist, Dr. K, because she's in there so much. But
I love it.
anyway, like, having that support was critical for me. And I can't even express how much ROI I've gotten from it now. Like I'm able to grow my business to like such multiples in heights because of the things that I'm applying that I learned back then. So it really just the advice would be to get support. So, we have tons of tools out here now as well. Like you can use different kinds of things that you can get your hands on. There's different AI tools as well. There's a lot of folks out there, a lot of groups, community, like again, that you don't have to be by yourself. Like in our EC collective, we got 100 women of color and many of whom are going through career changes of some sort or another. So like just knowing that other people are in this with you and being able to tap into that, like it could save you so much time. Like it could shorten your search, right? Because if you meet the right person, connects you to the right person, that could be your next role. Like that literally just happened last night with somebody in the EC collective. They were like, "Oh, do you know anybody in such and such?" And I was like, "Yeah, let me ask my friend." They know the person who's hiring for this role. So like, what's going to happen there? Anyway, and that's only because they joined the collective, so I know them.
I love that though. And that last piece you mentioned about how at times it just takes one,
Yeah.
that is so huge and resonates with me very deeply because I probably wouldn't be still in New York if it weren't for this one woman who kind of changed the trajectory for me when I was like floundering around when I first got here and looking for legal jobs. And it was a volunteer opportunity that actually sparked kind of the, movement begets movement, right? It kind of sparked this thing. And I was like, oh, boom. I was struggling for like 8, 9 months. And then within 2 weeks, I had the clerkship after meeting her literally 2 weeks prior. So it's like these types of things are huge.
That's right. And that person was a sponsor or a champion for you, not just a mentor, which everybody always wants a mentor. And okay, mentors are
Absolutely.
cool, but you really need sponsors and champions. And that person took action on your behalf. Like, I mean, I love that so much. And you can see how it truncated. Who knows what would have happened if that one connection didn't happen, right? You might have been searching for 2 more years. You might have left New York. This whole thing might not have happened, right? So I love that as a perfect illustration. Exhibit A.
Yes. And so love that you mentioned that. So when you think about this now, what are maybe some practical steps you'd recommend to professionals who are actually seeking to cultivate authentic leadership and build workplaces that truly value diversity? And I imagine that's probably really tough, especially now given the climate.
It's just going to get harder and harder. So like the weight of that question, it sits with me big time.
I
And I
know.
think about it a lot. I do think
Yeah.
about it a lot. I think, okay, I had prepped an answer, but then actually, as you asked me this again, something else hit me. So I'm going to say this one first. I think we have to think more about building our own ecosystems. So it's like a dual thing. We got to push for it kind of goes back to how initially I was saying like first I want to be a community organizer and then I was like major. So like we need people making change from outside the system. We need people making change from inside the system. Similarly to a workplace, we need folks pushing for change and pushing the institution to change, but also I think we need kind of spaces that we are creating ourselves that are already predisposed to be equitable, to be psychologically safe, to be supportive, while we are also pushing the behemoth and trying to like, move the needle a little bit over here. It's like a twofold thing to me. And so I think because trying to influence larger institutions, like we know how hard that is, and the change can be incremental and it can feel very much like 2 steps forward, 3 steps back. So while we do that, we also need the things that are able to sustain us. And those would be those safe spaces that are already like set up from jump to be a different way, like a third way. And the culture is organically already from that early point, equitable, has space for people, is not, is at least, anti-oppressive in its design. a little bit. And so, those would be spaces that we need for ourselves, because you need to have that to replenish you to then continue day after day of trying to push the larger institutional change. That's kind of what came to me just now. Yeah, but I think we need our own ecosystems on different levels too, within institutions, outside of institutions, so like community based. The whole Black Project 2025, like where Black folks are just like economically just keeping the money in the community. I love that. Like that to me is an example of that sort of thing. And then for the folks that are in the systems and really in there and trying to, push back against the tide sort of thing, or allies who are kind of like working towards this, I think it's really important to, like you said, authentic leadership and equity, right? So we got to listen to people. I mean, actually talk to them and actually listen to what they're saying, which might mean you got to tap into those EQ, skills, listen between the lines. What are they not saying? What are they saying non-verbally? What are they telling you through their action or inaction? And then figure out, what do people actually need? What are the gaps that got to be filled? What are the impacts that certain policies are having that may be like disparate impact or inequitable in some sort of way we didn't imagine, Just, yeah, what do folks need, and how do we try to actually level a playing field,
No, I love that. And as you think about the future ahead for you, what type of impact are you hoping to have?
I think about this a lot, this idea of like, all right, what am I trying to do here? What is the legacy I'm trying to leave through Embrace Change and just kind of like in general? And I think it's really just like to keep pushing this. As much as I talk a good game about all these things, like I also have all of my flaws and all of my limiting thoughts and like all the things that I don't want to do, and where I hold myself back or where I hold our mission back because I don't know, I tell myself I'm too tired, or like I don't want to go to that thing, that networking thing. And so, it helps me to think about this legacy of, it all comes back to the mission, like all women of color, money, power, and respect. Until that is done and we can fairly say that, I know that there's work for Embrace Change to do. And so I want to just get us to, all the spaces where there are women of color and people of color who've never heard of us and who really do need us. Every time I hear from somebody new who joins our newsletter, or like I talk to them on social or whatever, and they're like, I wish I knew about you like 5 years ago, or when I was blah, 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 then I'm like, okay, I know that means I need to get back on that megaphone and like expand our reach even more, even if I would rather, be in my own little space, like type in an email or whatever.
Right.
I gotta get out there because there's more folks who really need to be connected to the ecosystem. So I don't know if that answers your question.
It does. It does. No, I appreciate that. And look, like you said, it is a lofty goal, but it's something to always push towards. So I think that is something that's what these visions are about, right? You're at least inching forward each time, every day, every year. So I love that. So I appreciate you mentioned that.
Yes.
So I'm
Onward.
going to flip the mic on you now.
Yes.
Okay.
I
So
can't wait.
what's one question you have for me that I can hopefully answer?
I mean, you'll be able to answer it, I think. And listen, I'm slightly resentful that I only got one question because I really would love. I mean, I can already tell. I feel like I talked so much during this hour. I wish that we could have one where like it's conversational or whatever.
Yeah.
But I don't have my own podcast, so we'll see about
Not
that.
yet. Not
Yeah,
yet.
that's right. So one question I'll ask you now is, what is a legacy that you want to leave?
Oh, that's a good one. Ooh. So I would say, and that's actually very timely too. So I have recently started, like in the past 3-4 years, coming into what I feel like I was meant to do. And so working in education and doing what I work in healthcare day to day, but within healthcare, my big theme is around redefining healthcare education. So I've recently come into that. And I've obviously recently come into this type of fold of talking about career transitions and things like that. The big theme is about positively impacting the human experience. And how I'm trying to do that, that's the legacy that I want to leave, is in everything that I'm doing, whether it's professionally or personally, I am genuinely trying to positively impact that experience. So when I talk about the show, the thread of work, the thread of leaving a job, all those things, the premise is that one, we don't talk about resignations enough. Two, we've all had this experience. We have these dividing lines, right? You know, this political party, this age, this gender, this generation, whatever, right? But we're all much more connected than we want to give ourselves credit for.
Yes.
And so this is one way for me to help kind of break that down, right? Us talking about this common thread of work and leaving a job, because the feelings that you've talked about, whether it be imposter syndrome or the fear or whatever, someone else who doesn't look like you and is maybe of a different gender and different religious background can relate to that. And that's a commonality that I want to highlight, right? So that's one.
Yes.
Two, with the education space now, it's about like now I've had this opportunity to see learning, like to see individuals from marginalized communities get exposed to experiences in healthcare where
Yeah.
light bulbs go off that, hey, I could
Yeah.
do this. I was thinking doctor, nurse, but that's so far fetched and truthfully, maybe a lot of money to get to that. I don't know how I'd pay for, but there's this entry level role that could get me there, at least gets me into the system, gets me doing X, Y, and Z thing. And let me tell you, Cynthia, look, I'm an employment attorney by trade. Like I did not expect to be doing what I'm doing now, but it touched me in a way that it's almost like you can't go back now. Not almost, but I can't go back now.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so what I'm doing professionally is continuing to move that forward. And then there are other things that are brewing now that as I'm looking to expand the impact regionally, nationally, and who knows how far it could go, in that with that same theme around education, I'm just moving forward to it. So now it's like everything I do has to be aligned with what I said that I wanted to do. And so the legacy that I'm leaving is hopefully that. One, I did what I said what I was going to do,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And then two, here are these nuggets around the connections that we make, uh, providing opportunities for youth and education, just really exposing them to what exists. And I would love for them to work either my organization or others. That's what I want to leave.
I love that. And I can visualize and see as you are talking like how the generational impact of that is going to be so much positive impact, like you were saying in the beginning. And it is all about connections, connecting people to not only each other, but also ideas or a vision for their future possibility. Like, I mean, there's so much research and studies that back how that can like change the course of so many lives. So I love that. I'm so glad you are doing what you are doing.
Thank you.
So
Thank you.
glad.
And great question. I love that. You're right. You said I could answer it. And yeah, that one touched me because I'm like, oh wow. Like I am like, when you come into these types of feelings and spaces, which truthfully obviously hadn't happened until a couple of years ago,
Yeah.
it's new and I'm still figuring it out while I'm going. So,
Yes, we all are.
that's the beauty of it. Yeah.
I know. That is so
Well,
beautiful. Oh my
yeah.
gosh.
Well, I want to just thank you so much for
Oh,
coming on the
thank
show, responding to the comment that I made on LinkedIn, and it's been a pleasure hearing the story, hearing about the org, hearing about the book, and where can our listeners find you and support the work that you're doing?
Thank you so much. And I can't help but be myself, but everybody, I got this podcast because I pitched myself. I pitched myself to Brian and now I'm here. Okay. So pitch yourself.
Love
Anyway,
that.
so folks can learn about us on our website. It's embracechange.nyc. So everything is kind of aggregated on there or whatnot, but I really encourage folks to get on our newsletter. It's called The Trajectory. So get on the trajectory. You can click the button at the top right corner of the website homepage, or there's pop-ups and stuff, and you'll get some freebies. But I send out weekly advice where I just, there's a lot of gems in there, a lot of just the stuff you really need to be doing, and none of the kind of like fluffy stuff or whatnot. And it's always centering women of color and people of color. Beyond that, on all the socials, I think those are linked on the footer of our website. But we're on all the channels, LinkedIn, Instagram, TikTok, YouTube, and the like. So hope to see you all on there and love to hear updates and wins. So if you listen to this and you want to reach out, please do. you know how to find me.
Thank you for that. Look, that'll do it for today's episode. Again, I want to thank Cynthia Pong for joining me today. I'll share all their info in the show notes. Hope you all have a great week. Hope you picked up some nuggets here, and definitely don't forget to go check out that book. Don't stay in your lane, because we don't want anybody staying in their lanes. Be different and be intentional. So we'll see you all next time. Cynthia, thank you again.
Thank you so much, Brian.
Thanks for listening to Why I Left. Join us next time for more inspiring stories about growth, resilience, and transformation. Visit us online at www.whyileft.co. That's whyileft.co. And subscribe on YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or the Alive Podcast Network. See you soon.